Happened on that day. You took out your colors and your ink and your clay. You painted a picture, formed an image of the one you thought you were. And I was there, the shining memorial. Yes, I was there. Do you dare speak my name? Yes, I was there. The shining memorial.
Oh. Hello, everyone.
Welcome to everyone. Yes, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I know there was some confusion about time because London just changed time last night. And yes, we are very fortunate to have Pat Pearsall on in just a moment. But before we go there, I'd like to share something that I do. It's not quite a meditation, but it's almost like a meditation. It's, there's energy coming out of our fingertips and it goes out into the ethers. And when we put our fingers together, we close a circuit. And they've measured the voltage of energy that comes out. It's, if we close our circuit, it makes us centered. So I find that every time I close my hands like this, not religious, it's just mechanical. And I find myself feeling love. I find myself feeling centered. I find myself focused on my heart because my hands are right in front of my heart. And so if you want to, you can just take one deep breath and be there like this. And I love starting and finishing important teachings in this way. And Ginny, you wanted to take us through
I will. I just want to say, now you've said that I end up, when I sit, just sitting anywhere, I often end up finding myself that I'm holding my hands like this down on my lap.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? I'm probably doing that subconsciously without realizing it at all.
And it does, you see a lot of politicians putting their fingertips together. And
Yes.
it doesn't allow other energies to come in as strongly when you do that. You're self-focused.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Okay. So yes, let's just go through this beautiful heart breathing. That'll get us all in that beautiful energy of love and centeredness again. So I'm going to get everyone to just close their eyes. And what I want you to imagine is closing your eyes, inside your mind's eye, I want you to imagine everybody that you love just stood there. If that's your pets, your family, your friends, and behind them, I want you to imagine all of your spiritual team, your multidimensional team behind them, or God source behind that, and just feel that love that's coming through the ethers towards you from everybody that you love and everybody that loves you. And what we're going to do is we're going to take in a big, deep breath of that beautiful unconditional love, just breathing it in, allowing it to fill your heart space, and see it flooding down through your entire body, down to your toes, your fingertips, top of your head. And on the out breath, just setting the intention that you're going to let go of everything that no longer serves you. Just letting it all go, no matter what it is. You don't need to hold on to anything anymore. And then on the in-breath again, we're taking in that beautiful unconditional love, seeing it as a pink mist flooding through your body, going into each and every cell, just flooding your cells with unconditional love. And again on the out breath, just releasing and letting go of anything, whether it was anything earlier today, last week, 10 years ago, or when you were a child. We're just going to let it all go. And another big deep breath in of that beautiful pink mist, feeling it flood through your entire body. And this time it's going to go out through your skin and right the way out to your energy field, which is by now has expanded out even more. So you're now sitting or lying, whatever you are, or standing in a bubble of unconditional love, which is just beautiful to walk around in that bubble and be in that bubble. It's a safe space to be, just breathing out, letting go, and coming back to your normal breath. Just knowing that each breath in, you're breathing in unconditional love, and each breath out, you're releasing what no longer serves you and your path forward. And open your eyes when you're ready.
You, Ginny. That was
You're
so
welcome.
beautiful. I think I needed that. Maybe we all needed
Good.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think so. It's good to come home, bring it all home and be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have Pat Pearsall coming on in just a few moments. And yes, Pat and I, we met at a contact expedition in 2018, and we have since done a lot of traveling together and doing CE5 together, which is contact with extraterrestrials, and we've had an immense amount of experiences. And I know Pat as a person of high integrity, and her experiences, when she has an experience, when she has a download or a message coming in, she very often calls me or sends it to me via email, and some of them are so profound. So when I asked her to come on the call, she wasn't remembering many of them really, and she started looking through all the writings, all the things that she's written down, and she goes, oh my goodness, there's so many. I have to order them. I have to put them, put page numbers on them. And I said, well, you've got a book, so I'm pretty sure this is going to turn into a book.
Awesome.
Shall we see what Pat has to share with us?
That would be wonderful.
So here's Pat coming on. There you are, Pat. All you need to do is unmute. And
okay.
I've already introduced you, letting everybody know that we are probably getting a preview of a book that is in the making?
Well, one never knows. I have, I have watched you write your book, Oona. Watched a few other people that I know write books, and it's a bigger job than I thought. I mean, that's quite an undertaking. And so I have kind of eschewed that and said, that's a lot of work. But maybe so, you never know. When I look at all the stuff I've written, I think, maybe that is a book.
Yeah.
Maybe it's meant to be.
It's a lot of time in front of the computer, which is what's keeping me from publishing more books, because I do have a few in the pipeline. But I really think the messages that you have need to go out to humanity in so many different ways. And I'm really happy that you're here to share some of the highlights of the messages you receive. And who would have known that you receive messages? When did this start for you, Pat?
As you and I were talking earlier, I am absolutely stunned at this, right? That what has happened in this life. I think that when I was much younger, when I was like 12, 13, and I was doing things like reading the Tao Te Ching and learning how to meditate, no one in my family would read a book like that. I don't even know where I got that book. I don't know how I got the book. I don't know how I even came about to start meditating. So to me, those are kind of early, almost like messages, but it's really basically a direction, right? And you don't even know it is until much later. I was in my 40s before I really looked back and thought, what in the world, how did I ever get those books? How did this ever start, right? And then I was on a spiritual path, and then watched Unacknowledged of Dr. Greer's, and that began the whole huge, I will tell you the number of contact transmissions that began at that first CE5, where we met, if you'll remember, in Texas.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was when I actually started to have messages that I could hear that were audible, that were, and that was stunning. I mean, you really you're in disbelief that this is happening, right? And you're like wandering around saying, oh my God, have I developed schizophrenia? And I didn't know it. Like, what is this? I mean, you really do. You start checking yourself. And of course, I'm kind of skeptical at heart. And so I was always filled with a little doubt. And I would say, geez, I need to see if is there some natural reason for this, And that is when, during one of those times when something happened and I had a download or a message or a transmission or got taken somewhere, I remember saying, okay, now I need to see if I can explain this away in something from the natural world. And this voice comes out and it says, your doubt is exhausting. And I said, I get it. I started to laugh. I thought, it's exhausting me too. So there comes a moment when anybody's doing this work and you start receiving these things and you begin to see that there's a purpose to this, that you say, okay, now is the time maybe just to embrace it. And
that's such a lovely message. Your doubt is exhausting. It's not stop doubting. It's not telling you what to do. It's telling you what it feels like, which makes it much more alive.
Yeah.
I love that message. Your doubt is exhausting.
Yeah. And I have come to see that they have really quite the sense of humor. Now they have absolutely no compunction about correcting you if you have something wrong. And I can share a couple of those. I mean, the one in the kitchen, Oona, you and I had gone on the CE5 with Dr. Greer. We went to Enchanted Rock in Texas.
Yes.
And I came back from that trip, walking from it was the next morning. And of course, on that trip, on that CE5, for those 6 nights. All manner of things happened, stuff I could not even wrap my head around. I saw the largest ship I'd ever seen in my entire life, right? And still to this day, it was the largest. Huge, big rectangle covered in lights. I mean, who could have imagined, right? Hearing a voice, being given medicine so that I could stop coughing and go to sleep that the last night there, all kinds of things. So when I got back from that next morning, walking into the kitchen, a voice comes out of nowhere, which really, these voice things started to really get my attention. Seriously. And it said, your life is about to change for forever. Yes. And I remember I absolutely stopped and thought, hold on, wait a minute. And of course, we immediately think, oh my God, is this a bad thing? And there was no answer, but the feeling of the energy was, this is good. This is a good thing. And I thought, oh, thank God. And then we went off to, I think the next one I went to was Oracle. And that CE5 with Dr. Greer, I came back from that. I think it was shortly after that when all kinds of things happened at that one as well. That was one where I got taken out of my body. Seriously, because some of these contact experiences are downloads of information, and you get whole packets of information deposited in a complete, the whole concept deposited in a complete form. Some are audible, they're auditory, you can hear them, they're a voice. Some are in consciousness. You will have an insight, and people say, well, maybe it's just my imagination. Well, if you have information now that you didn't have 10 minutes ago, I'm not sure how you got it. I mean, that is definitely a transmission of information. That's a download. And some of them, you are literally taken out of body, and you will find yourself somewhere else in a meeting, viewing something on a ship. So these contact experiences take all different forms, but I will tell you that many of them have a message of love, and that it's in many of them. You and I went on a road trip, not the one. This was the one that we went to to do remote viewing, if you remember.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so we went to New Mexico to do a class in remote viewing, and this required all kinds of side trips. We went to Alamogordo. We went to meet Lynn Buchanan. We went to all kinds of different places, right? And I think it was on that one that I started to develop what is called cities, but what I would call abilities. And these are abilities that begin to develop as you move into higher states of frequency. That is what determines cities. And I'm a big believer in the organic development of these. Everybody has some of these cities and abilities, right? Some of them are you don't have to have a very, very high frequency to have them. Everybody has had the thing happen where you think of someone and they call.
So cities are the Sanskrit word, I believe, for special abilities, powers, and they can be exceptional, like levitation, or they can be hearing things that other people are thinking, and that's one of the things you had, the experiences you had on that trip.
Oh, and that was overwhelming.
Yes, and I think you've developed that, haven't you? Had more and more.
Oh, more and more and more and more and more.
Where you can hear what other people are thinking.
Yeah, it can be wonderful. It can be a little disconcerting. And it doesn't happen all the time. Thank God. I'm sure everybody would be really happy about that. But on that trip, I mean, I was sitting in the car, you and I were in the car, and there was a car next to us with some other people that we knew. And all of a sudden I'm hearing the entire conversation.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, hold on. We're in this car. The windows are closed. And I'm looking over at the car. I'm like, uh-oh, Houston, we have a problem here. Like, what in the world is happening, right? And it really so took me by surprise. I don't know if you remember that. Everybody else went into that Air and Space Museum, and I had to make up an excuse to just sit in the car for a minute. I said, everybody just go in. I'll come in a minute. I've got a call to make. I literally had to sit and get some composure back.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because
remember that well.
My
And
face, I couldn't even keep it off my face. I was like, oh, yeah.
And haven't you had experiences now where you had confirmation that what you're hearing is correct?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely, I have. Absolutely. When after that, when I got back from that, I was in the kitchen at my home, and I thought, now, why in the world would I start to have these cities manifest, right? Why would this be happening? And I thought, I started meditating when I was about 12 or 13. And I thought it must be, and now did I meditate all those years? No. There are years in between there where, I was in my 20s moving around and doing things. And then when I was in my 30s and 40s, I had children. So there are many times in my life where I set aside my meditative practice, right? Because I was busy with other things. But I thought that since I was now meditating a lot and had been for a number of years, I thought that must be it. I'm meditating a lot. I've been meditating for a long time. So I'm beginning to develop these cities. And this voice comes into my kitchen so loud that I probably almost jumped, and it says, that is incorrect. I was like, I'm looking around the kitchen like, okay, what is happening? And it said, it is not the quantity of your meditation. It is the quality of your meditation. It is when you added love to your meditation that these began to develop. And they said, then it turned that transmission, which was audible, then became visual. And it showed me, this was like my right hand going up. And they said, this is adding love to a meditation. And my left hand going up, but lower. This is the development of cities. The more love you add, the more cities develop and up. It said it should never be like this. This is imbalance, where people are developing cities or trying to develop cities without the frequency of love with it, right?
Yeah.
And they said this is imbalance. And then they said, this is the physics of it. And they actually used that word, which really shocked me. I'm thinking, okay. And so that began, these kinds of transmissions that would be audible, then would be visual. I would be shown something. Sometimes it's an entire concept deposited in your brain. But that before this, I had been sitting out in the sun meditating. I did this for years. I would take a break, sit in the sun, and meditate. And I started thinking, well, I had read book after book after book about how to raise your, people would say, if you do this, this, and this, you will raise your frequency and you raise your vibration. But nowhere in the book did they tell you how to do it. I would finish the book and it would be nothing. I'm like, okay, you need to raise your frequency, but there's nothing in the book about how to do this. And so I would buy another book.
So these books, were they suggesting that you meditate, but didn't tell you how to meditate? Is that
well, it wasn't even about meditation. They would say, if you raise your frequency and raise your vibration, all these different things, this will do this in your life and that in your life, and things will change. And I remember thinking, I would get to the end of the book and I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something in this book? They didn't tell you in there how to actually raise your frequency. So I would buy another book.
It's like some of the, sorry, butting in, but it's like some of the books are about positive thinking and all of that stuff, and to create abundance, but they've forgot the core thing, that if you do all those things and you add opening your heart up with it and the feeling that goes along with it, then you've got it.
That's it. And so I read all these books and I spent all this money on books that had nothing in them. And I should just meditated. And so I remember sitting in meditation one day saying, well, that's that. I'm obviously not going to get this information. And I thought it is either that this is the most closely guarded secret on the planet, or they have no idea how to do it at all. And I think it's they had maybe they had an idea, but they just neglected to actually put it in the book, right? And as I'm sitting there having that thought, a voice comes into my living room and it says, fill your heart with love. And I sat there and I thought, that's all? And they said, that's it. And so,
you know, Pat, so many people don't know how to do that.
well, and yes, and then yes, well, I sat there for a minute and I thought, oh my God, that's all? That's all I have to do, right? And I sat there and thought, how do you do that? What would make my heart fill with love? And I thought, well, let me think of all the things that fill my heart with love, right? I thought about my children that I love dearly. And I thought, well, the problem there is I love them dearly, except, and I do. Well, when we think about our children, there are all kinds of other emotions involved, right? Sometimes we're frustrated. If you've got young children, sometimes you're like, really frustrated. Sometimes we're worried about our children, right? And so there are all kinds of other emotions involved in there that kind of it can muddy the waters of a very pure focus of that, right? And so I thought, well, I love my pets. I started to think about all the animals that I've had in my life, that I have now, but that I've had in the past as well. And the minute that I would think of each one of those animals, I could feel my heart just filling with love. And I thought, you know what? As I would go through and picture each one of them, and remember them and look at the ones that I had now, I could feel my heart just swelling with this feeling and emotion of love. And the voice said, you have just raised your vibration.
Pat,
and I was like,
what about, I mean, I've looked after your animals.
Yeah.
What about when your dog chews up your windowsill?
Well, that can be an issue. But when I'm sitting there thinking of them, somehow when you think of your pets, you don't remember, you don't think of those things, right? You just see their little face and when they look at you and you have all this love for them. And, many years ago, when I started to read, there's a book called Your Soul's Plan or something like this. Stephen, I can't remember his last name, wrote that book, but I remember reading that. And he had said, he had been on the search for mediums, right? That he felt he could really were doing this kind of work. Speaking to people who had passed or doing mediumship. And one of the people that he had mentioned in the book, I actually reached out to her. And in a reading at one point, this was years before, she said, I see you on the side of a mountain in a circle, teaching meditation and teaching people how to fill their heart, teaching meditation and using animals as part of this. And I said, okay, I think you've got this wrong. First of all, I make dresses for a living. That is what I do. I said, I do not teach meditation. I can't imagine sitting in a circle on the side of a mountain doing that. Cut to 3 years later, I am in Mount Shasta. I am with a Dr. Greer's group. We're in a circle. I'm teaching about meditation, and I'm telling them how they can use the love of animals to fill their hearts with love. I mean, you just can't even make this stuff up, right? It is how it works. And so, yeah, that love is such a huge component of this. And so when I had this whole message from them in the kitchen about, look, it was when you added love to your meditation that all of this started.
And so it's a kind of a very innocent, pure love, right?
It is. Yeah. It's very simple. When I started meditating in the sun, I would sit there and I thought, okay, now I'm going to fill my heart with love. I'm going to do what I learned to do, really fill my heart with love, raise my frequency, raise my vibration. And as I was sitting there, I thought, now that I have this whole heart full of love, it seems like I should do something with it, right? Instead of just sitting here using it myself. And I thought, I'm going to radiate this. I'm going to start to radiate this out. And I thought, if I do north, then east, then south, then west, I could cover this whole area of the northern continent, right? And then I thought, if I'm doing that, then I should actually do it for the entire planet. I should go around the planet and cover the entire planet radiating love. And I thought, okay, if you're radiating love to the planet, then maybe you should actually add the solar system. So I added the solar system. And after that, I added the Milky Way galaxy. And after that, I added the Andromeda galaxy. And then further into the universe, just flying around out there, radiating the frequency of love. As I flew around, there's, billions of galaxies out there, right? And I remember this thing got so long because I kept adding things to it. Pretty soon it was like a 45-minute meditation out there in the sun. I mean, these things grow. They take on a life of their own, right?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there one day thinking, I'm sitting out here doing all this. Is this doing anything? Is anybody even aware that this is happening, that I'm doing this? Is there anything being done? And a voice comes out right on my patio and it says, "We join you when you do this."
Mm.
And I was absolutely shocked. I thought, and the sense that I got was that these were very highly developed beings who were certainly capable of taking our own energy and adding to it and enhancing it, right? And enlarging this. And I could see it like a wave. It was almost like I was shown like, okay, here's the pond. And we drop a pebble into the middle of the pond. And that goes out in waves. And the further out it goes, the larger they get, the deeper they get. And it said that love goes on for forever.
Yeah.
To infinity.
That's
when
lovely.
When you do this love, and because they're enhancing it, and it is my belief that whoever is doing this, if you're filling your heart with love and you're sending it out, I think you're getting help to enhance that. I mean, they're never going to miss a chance to get more love out there into the universe, because it is the single thing that changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we go back to the start where, filling your heart with love. We talked about the love part.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Right.
there are people who don't have a sense of where the heart is. You kind of know it's somewhere here.
Right.
But really a sense like I know where my fingers are. The same sense, the same knowingness of where my heart is.
Yes, where your heart is. Almost every single one of these messages and transmissions has some aspect of it has to do with love. Every single one of them. Now, there are some that, there was one in Joshua Tree. And that one was a different type of a contact experiences. I woke up in the morning and I laid back down to meditate. And the minute that I did that, I found myself taken right out of body. Now, I didn't realize that I was out of body at first. And I'm in what is a meeting. And I'm listening to these beings speak to me. The night before, we had been out in Joshua Tree, and we had beings in the circle working on one of the attendees had hurt his knee. And I saw a light across the circle, and I thought, wow, what is that? Does someone have a light on over there? And he finally said, no, there was a being here that asked if I wanted some help with my knee. And there were beings in the circle. Well, everybody got excited. It's chaotic, right? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, there are beings here. And in this meeting with them the next morning, they said, we are happy that they were excited that we were there. Can you teach them that when we are there, that they can go into a meditation and fill their hearts with love and be calm? And they said, when it's chaotic, and they showed me the circle of people, they said, when it's chaotic, this is what the energy looks like. And it was very spiky up and down. They said, if they fill their hearts with love this is what their energy will look like all the way around. It'll be very high. And they said, that is an energy that is safer for us to be there. And they said, can you share that? And I said, oh, absolutely. I will do that. And then they said, you need to explain to them how important love is. They need to understand that, like the Beatles song, and they said that, they actually said that, all you need is love. Love is all you need. And then they went on to explain that there was a person at this meeting that I had met the year before. She and I had shared a very odd thing in meditation where it had to do with our eyes and the focus of our eyes. And they said, we would like you to take that couple aside and tell them that we would like to ask them to help us with something. Take them aside because this group will have experience envy. I'd never heard that sound, never heard that phrase before. And they said, this is why we had you share, the two of you share the I event last year. Now, that also shows that time is so nonlinear when you're dealing with these kinds of transmissions. That I understood in that moment that, wait a minute, how did you know that a year later that this would be happening, that she would even be there?
Are you able to share the I event, or is that?
Yes, I can share it. Yes, we were in Oracle, Arizona, and we do a thing, Dr. Greer does a thing where everybody, we have silent meditations, we have remote viewing meditations, that kind of thing. And on one of the silent meditations in the afternoon, I was sitting directly across from Michelle, and she and I didn't know Michelle very well. We just met during that one. In fact, when I met her the first night she was there, it was really kind of funny because she said, I'm coming to this thing for 6 nights, and I'm kind of wondering if I even should have come because I don't know anybody. I'm going to sit outside here under the stars and try to contact ETs with people I don't know. I mean, some of these people could be actually crazy. And I remember
like
it
me.
was really, well, it was almost word for word of how I felt going to the very first one. I thought, wait, have I lost my mind? I'm going to go out and sit under the stars with 30 people I don't know, trying to contact ETs. Yeah, I must have lost my mind. I'm going to cancel this thing. There's no way I'm doing this. But so she and I are there that afternoon, and I had said to her, you know what? I understand that feeling completely, but I will tell you that my experience is that through CE5, I have made some of the best friends that I've ever had in my life. I've met people that I would trust my life to, truly. There's a quality to this kind of work, right? That transcends normal. These are the kind of friendships that one can only hope for, right, through their lives. So we're in the afternoon having this session, and we're doing a silent meditation. And I have my eyes closed, and all of a sudden my eyes are slammed down as far as they could go. It was almost painful, really. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And I thought, okay, well, just most of the time okay, let's go with it and see what happens. And that had never happened to me before in a meditation, where my eyes literally had been forced to look down that far. In fact, it had never happened before. So we come out of the meditation, and I'm thinking, well, this is probably not something I'm going to share because it was a little bizarre, right? And I was sort of working with Dr. Grant. I didn't want to scare anybody, like, oh, you're going to have an eye thing here. So I didn't share it. And Michelle put her hand up, and she was sitting directly across from me. And she said, well, I just want to share this thing that happened. She said, I closed my eyes, and she said, all of a sudden my eyes are forced down to a position that was really painful, almost painful. And I'd never had that happen before. And my eyes were now I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world? And so now, of course, I have to share, right? I have to share that the same thing happened. And I said, well, interestingly enough, the same exact thing happened to me. And so she and I are kind of looking at each other like, wow. And Dr. Greer said it wasn't unusual for people to share the same kinds of things, right? Sometimes you'll hear something everybody will hear it in the right ear, but this was very unusual. The eye thing was unusual. It's not something you would forget. And so the next year in Joshua Tree, when I am taken out in this meditation to this meeting, and they said, we would like you to take them aside, the couple aside, and tell them that we would like to ask them for some help. And take them to the side because there's experience envy. And I said, okay. And he said, and that's when they said, this is why we had the two of you share the eye thing last year.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Yeah. And so
why?
They had us share that because a year later, they wanted me to take that couple aside, Michelle and her husband.
Oh, Michelle and her husband. Okay.
And say the ETs would like to ask you to do something for them at a later date. And for the husband to tell him that you will think they have forgotten you, but they will not. You will be asked eventually for help. And all of that did come to pass.
And so so Michelle and her husband needed to trust you and know that there's a connection.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, when I brought this up in the group, I said, so we're going to have to step to the side and I will explain to you what happened in this, because I did share a lot of this in the meeting. I said, look, this is what they said. When they come into the group, please fill your heart with love and become calm, because this is an energy that is safer for them to come in. I mean, we can be unpredictable. Humans can be unpredictable in their fear, right? They can do all manner of things. So, yeah, so that was really interesting. And when I was sharing that in the circle, and again, Michelle is right across the circle from me. She says, well, you know, Pat, this love thing, it's like the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love. Now, the ETs had just said this to me in that meeting. You need to explain to them how important love is, to fill your heart with love. It's like the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love. And here she's sitting across from me saying, it's like the Beatles song, you know, all you need is love. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's like, holy cow, right? And so, yes, these messages have that amazing quality of love and affection. I mean, there have been times that I have had this energy of love, this frequency of love, almost just sent right in a meditation, to the point where you're in tears. I mean, you're sitting there. I am not a person given to crying about much, really. I mean, all of a sudden, and I kind of say to people, look, if you're the kind of person that doesn't cry very much, I'm just going to tell you, you start doing this work, you're going to be crying all the time, because that frequency, the power of that energy from them is that is a frequency of love that we are unused to. Right? Yeah. We are unused to.
And of course, when there's a gathering of us sitting in circle, and we're doing this in the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings, and we're doing it for several nights in a row, that really fills up the space with that energy of love.
It really does. And
that's why we have the experiences then, right?
Exactly. That frequency is so profound. You know, the word love has its own frequency. As Oona, we've talked about frequency. Every word has a frequency, right? Everyone does. And love has this incredibly powerful frequency. It is, to me, the frequency of the source, really, because it is that same energy, right? And that was something that in a very recent download happened, or a recent message. We call them downloads, but that kind of, I'm not even sure I like using that, because these are really transmissions. They're more of a transmission, whether it's audible or visual, or it's through consciousness, it's a telepathic thing, or you're actually taken out. I mean, literally got taken out on a craft one time. And that was so phenomenal that, and yet I always had this fear of heights, right? I should probably get over that if we're going to be doing this work. And all of a sudden I'm on this craft, and I realize that there are windows there and I can see the earth through the window. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a dream come true. I am actually gonna be able to see the earth. And so I was standing on a little raised platform in this craft. It was like dark gray in there. And I knew I was standing on something. And I thought, I'm going to get down and go over to that window, and I'm going to get a chance to look at this, right? Well, before I had a chance to in my mind even think about moving, the entire craft becomes transparent, and I'm standing in the middle of space with a 360-degree view of everything, and I'm like, and of course I'm looking down. Then I look down, right, which was a big mistake, and I'm all of a sudden like, yeah, you're like, oh. The minute that I had fear was the minute that I was back in my body, right? Mm-hmm. The minute I had fear, the whole thing was over, and I'm back in. Yeah. And but every time I would think about this, it was as though I was there again. This is where time and space is nonlinear. When it comes to these kinds of interactions of messages, transmissions, interactions, experiences, time is just not linear. When you're there, it's like you're there that moment. It's like it's all real again. And I thought about that so many times being on that craft. And in one meditation, I'm sitting here thinking about how beautiful that was. And all of a sudden, I get this incredible wave of energy of this. It was like an energy of love and friendship, really affection. And it was so strong. And I thought, wait, where is this coming from? And it was coming from the ship, the actual craft. And I'm thinking, okay, this is very confusing. I didn't see anybody else in the ship with me. There may have been, but this energy was coming from the craft. And I brought this up, to Steve, to Dr. Greer, and I said, okay, hold on. What is this? And he said, well, the ships are organic, and they are imbued with the consciousness of the being whose ship it is. And so when I had that feeling of love come from that, it was coming from the ship. I mean, this is a very interesting thing to have a frequency of love come. I mean, it really was very unique. And it, in a way, I think it helps us to start to look at everything in terms of a frequency of love, whether it's a person, an animal, the craft that is conscious, a plant, the stars. I mean, everything is consciousness. Everything in the universe is consciousness, right? And so if you learn to develop love for everything, you will learn to develop love for literally everything in the universe, all creation. And that I think is the goal. Yeah. I think that's the goal.
Would you say that this is love? We fill our hearts with love and it goes out. Mm-hmm. Is there also for you a sense of being in a bubble of love, or love coming in?
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting point, because I was sat there in meditation one day and I was reminded that, look, you can't always be sending. Sometimes you have to be receiving. It's very important. Mm-hmm. I spend a lot of time sending, right? Sitting in meditation, radiating love. And they said, when you are sending, you will not receive. Really, Oona, this is just like telepathy. When we practice that, you're either sending or you're receiving. You're not doing both. You can't do both at the same time, right? And so was like a reminder, look, sending is good. Radiating love, it's wonderful. But you must also sit in meditation and receive, because this is when they can impart all kinds of knowledge to you. This is when you can receive love. You can receive information. I had a download on an airplane one time. Should I share that one, Oona?
Let me just go into the sending and receiving. So I remember an incident in my life when I was talking to somebody and he was complaining about not receiving messages.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you have to turn the knob from sending to receiving.
Exactly.
And that really changed it for him.
I do a similar thing when I'm about to do a healing on somebody. I get them to radiate love from their own heart to themselves in their own bubble, but then I also connect, because there's love in the field, and if you just connect to that love, again, it's all creation. And
Right.
then you can see, well, I'm a seer, so I see like streams of codes coming down, like golden light coming down into the person to boost that love up. So yeah, it is important to receive and give. Definitely, we need topping up ourselves.
It is so important. I mean, and I really didn't get that for a long time. I didn't. Did I sit in meditation quietly and get lots of stuff? Yeah, but I wasn't doing it intentionally. It wasn't with the intention of, okay, now I'm sitting quietly, I will receive, right? But that is the state in which you can have all kinds of information deposited. This is really the state in which you can learn a lot of things. Do I think that radiating love and filling your heart with love and doing what I consider goal-oriented meditations are important? I think they're very important. Forgiveness meditations, gratitude meditations, radiating love. Yeah, these things are incredibly important, but it's also important to receive. And, it's, for many of us, it's a little harder for us to receive than it is for us to send, right?
Yeah.
We get into the whole thing of like, okay, so I'm going to sit here and receive. You have to then, it's sort of when I did forgiveness meditation. I spent a week going back into all the way back as far as I could remember, and thought of any time anyone had injured me in any way, thought, action, word. And I thought, and forgive them. And then I spent another whole week going all the way back into as far back as I could remember, anytime that I injured someone in action, word, thought that I could remember. And then I thought, okay, so the last thing I need to do is that I need to do a meditation where I go back as far as I can go, see all these things, and forgive myself.
Yeah.
That one was so difficult, I cannot tell you. It's when we've opened our hearts up to receive that it's more difficult for us. But this is a very important thing to do.
Very important, almost more important than forgiving others.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Because we are beloved beings. I mean, everyone is that within everyone is that beloved divine being that we are. And it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I just want to take a moment to recognize all the people who are here, who are sharing all their thoughts on love. And it's wonderful to see you, Lisa and Rob and Brian and Laureen, Veronica. Thank you for being here. And I love what you're sharing. Yes, Tenerife. Rob and I were in Tenerife. That was my very first CE5 experience. So thank you for being here. Yes, Pat.
Yeah, you can see all these comments. I'm not able to see them, but I'm looking forward to reading them. Yeah, it is really so heartwarming to me, the number of people who now are awakened to all this, right? And they're sharing their experiences, and they're doing this work of learning to meditate and doing the work of filling their heart with love. I mean, this is, that path, being on this path of being awake and doing this work, I kind of say that this is a very narrow, straight path, and it requires work. So all of the stuff that we're doing, it requires discipline, right?
Yes.
Starting a meditative practice requires discipline. Learning to fill your heart with love requires work. I mean, people actually have to be actively involved.
Yes.
And I love seeing that people are willing to do that.
And it produces results, and it doesn't matter so much exactly which type of protocol you use, whether you're doing eating or other practices and meditations, certain meditations. It's the results that come when you do it in sincerity.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that intent is the most important part of it. What is your intent to do it? Because I do think that sometimes people have gotten kind of off the rails with saying, okay, well, I'm going to do this in order to get this, this or to get that. And that is an intent that I'm not sure is really produces as good results.
Yeah, it's like saying I'm doing plant medicine and having results from that, but that's not the same.
Right.
It's
and
not organic.
It should be more organic. My thoughts on that. I've shared it. I don't have what would to some people be a very popular position on this, but my position is that honestly, when it comes to some of those, psychedelics and plant medicines, it is really, people are trying to expand their consciousness, but those things can result in a too rapid of an expansion of consciousness. Much too rapid. And the ETs have numerous times cautioned humans to be careful about using things that expand your consciousness too rapidly. It can have a poor outcome over time.
Well, for some people, it could be very mind-blowing, literally, couldn't it?
Yeah. And we've seen that going back into the 50s and 60s. You remember? So,
it's being pushed by certain people in this world, and there's just too many situations. I mean, it's every once in a while there are people who are being healed, and yet on the big scale of things, there's too many people who end up in mental hospitals and distraught, and the brain not working properly anymore after that. So
I mean,
it has its place, and yet it's not for consuming, just like the beer Oktoberfest.
No, that's right. I think in a controlled situation, like a ceremony where everything is in a high vibe anyway, I think that's a bit different. But just for recreational purposes, not a good idea.
Yeah, and many people don't know the difference.
No, that's right.
But let's move on.
This is these are topics in the spiritual community, in the meditative community, in the UFO community, in the disclosure community, the CE5 community. These things are, there are fads that pop up here and there and take on a life of their own. And this is when I tell people, look, you really need to develop your discernment. You really need to do your own research on some of these things, and don't take anybody's word for this. You need to really develop your discernment and do your own research, form your own opinions.
That's a big thing, because we can listen to so many other people's opinions, but that just creates chaos. We really need to come to our own conclusion.
We do, and people often don't have the confidence in themselves, and they need to develop that, because really within them, people don't understand that this idea of who they actually really are, right? If you took your consciousness and you took who you are, and you go into smaller and smaller, dig down into that, magnify that to where you get eventually to where you are the very essence of who you are, the very essence of your consciousness, the essence of you, right? The soul. That essence, in that form, you are in what I see is the field, this flowing, moving field of consciousness that is everything. And in that form, you are instantly connected to absolutely everything, everywhere, not just this planet, not just even this universe, because are there other universes? There actually are, but everything, right? You're connected to everything. And when people begin to see that, if they can get there, if they can follow that line of thinking and see it, they instantly become aware that within that is the power and the ability to do absolutely anything and everything. I mean, in that form, they begin to understand that within them is the possibility that human consciousness, especially human consciousness, it is the most powerful thing on this planet, I can tell you.
Yeah.
It really is. It really, truly is.
Yeah. You know, we've just had a question a little bit more about plant medicine, and I'd just like to share a little more of my view. So what I've studied is what it looks like, what a spider web looks like when you give it different plant medicine, LSD or ayahuasca and so on. Well, then the spider web is never complete unless it's not on any drugs. So even coffee will cause the spider to create a web that's not complete. So if you think of the spider web as the neurons in your brain, the way I feel it is that's what happens. And I used to go around the world saying, don't ever take any plant medicine. Because the way I was taught by my teachers was that it's the shaman who takes the plant medicine. It's not the person, because the shaman has a fabric, an aura fabric that is strong enough to hold it. And the normal person, especially Westerners, do not have that grounded, stable fabric of energy. We don't have contact with the earth anymore, and the shamans in the Amazon forest, they don't realize how much we are not grounded. Right. So that's why so much of this stuff happens. And yet, after going around the world and telling everybody not to do plant medicine, I was in a place where I was taking an afternoon nap, and the place was up on a hill, and I could feel that energy of ayahuasca pulling me in, almost like an arm of a galaxy. It was pulling me in. I knew there was no way I could resist it. And then I remembered, oh yes, in the other house, that's what they were going to do. So, you know, I walked over and I had a look at the people, and I saw that they still have jobs, and they looked, you know, like they were grounded well enough. And so 2 days later, I did take it. And I don't know that one really needs to take it unless one has a very, very strong intention and knows what you're doing, you know, right. What circles you're in. Because my experience was that everybody was fine the next day. For me, it took a whole week to get back onto my feet.
Wow.
And the experience, the only thing I really got out of it was that I realized that if anything came towards me that was sort of lower frequency, all I had to do with my mind was think that this is not real. This is a figment of my imagination, as Charles Hall would say.
Right.
And it went away. So all I saw was angels and choirs, and it was beautiful. But it wasn't necessary for that kind of experience to do it. So I just wanted to, as an answer.
Yeah, I would like to share too, because I've also done ayahuasca, and it was in a ceremony. It was a whole weekend. And there was a whole range of people there, from psychologists, doctors, all sorts of people that wanted to go and experience as well. And many people there had been there several times. And we did ceremonies of tobacco. So it was all different types of plant medicine, cannabis, ayahuasca, and we had 2 separate nights of doing these ceremonies there. And yeah, it was really interesting. The first night, I didn't really have an intention. I just wanted to experience whatever came. It's really weird because I actually felt like my energy body was being pulled around my face, like my energy was being all shifted and moved all around me. But the second time, the second evening, I set an intention that I would like to meet some guides, 3 guides, if possible. And that's exactly what happened. I went in and I got all the psychedelic stuff, and it was like the psychedelic stuff was almost like a wall. And then through the wall in different places, things started to develop. And it was almost like, like one of those pictures that if you stare at it and let your eyes go soft, stare in the middle, and it's like a load of patterns. And then all of a sudden, once your eyes get it, it actually is a beautiful picture. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Those, like kids, you get them in kids' books. It's like loads of patterns. You stare in the middle, and then eventually you see the whole picture.
Yes.
It was a bit like that. And I had 3 different guides come through, and one of them was an ET, I will say, which was wonderful. Yeah, but I just wanted to experience it. I don't need it. I definitely don't feel I need it. It was an experience. And, we can get to that point without that. Once you develop yourself enough, you don't need that. You can do it yourself. Yeah.
Which is what Pat has done, right? Pat, you've developed all these abilities.
Yeah.
It is. I think, there's a lot of times that we as humans, we tend to complicate things, right? We tend to make things far more complicated than they really are. And that is something that I have begun to really, I think that this was really an insight that I was given very early on when I started to do this, get these kinds of messages, that look, it is you need to keep it simple. And it is simple. And the reason that it's simple, it has to be simple, because otherwise people aren't going to get it. And this information is so critically important for people to understand, especially how important love is, right? The frequency of love. It is simple for that reason. It is critical. Everything that's profound, every single thing I have found that is profound on this planet that we need to learn is simple. The most profound things are the simplest. And it is that way by design. The minute you use a word that someone doesn't understand, their cognitive understanding stops right there. And so all of this is simple. And love, just love everyone, right? I don't say love everybody. I say love everyone, because it is really everything that we need to learn to love. That's kind of, people think that meditation is the goal. I'm like, no, meditation is not the goal. Meditation is a tool. This unconditional, to learn unconditional love of all life everywhere is actually the goal. And it is not something that most people will be able to affect in one lifetime. It can take who knows how many lifetimes, right? It takes a long time. Can you do it in one lifetime? You can. Are there yogis and gurus who have done that? Yes, probably. But this requires a great deal of work, but it's very simple. Fill your heart with love. Every time you fill your heart with love, you raise your frequency. My feeling is, and my opinion is, that every time you do that, it doesn't go down to where it was before. It does not. It always stays gets a little higher and a little higher and a little higher. And so to me, that's the goal, right? We meditate, and that's a tool. And I always, on the calls that I do, I talk about really have a toolbox that you can use, things that you can use to raise your frequency and to raise your consciousness. Things like meditate, have a meditative practice. Laughter. I mean, laughter is one of the highest frequencies, right? And laughter raises your frequency. It does. It raises your frequency. Music it's a frequency that can raise your own vibration and frequency. Classical music, there are some classical music that is just absolutely beautiful. You listen to it, your heart fills with love. You're almost in tears, right? So music, and it doesn't even have to be classical music. It can be something from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s. As long as if there are words in it, you must make absolutely sure that the words that are used have a high frequency. Because there's some music, as we all know, that doesn't have that. So music, going out into nature can raise your frequency. Just being out there with trees and nature, being in the mountains, looking at, rabbits, all kinds of stuff like that can raise your frequency. Anything, there's lots of tools that can be in your toolbox.
So Pat, you and I, we talked about what we do when things are difficult in our lives. And one of the things I do is I've got a standard song that I sing when my frequency goes down. And I know that when we use our own voice, of course, it's even better than listening to canned music. The song is With a Smile and a Song. You have other techniques. Would you like to share them?
Well, which ones are you talking about? Because I do have lots of techniques.
Okay, I'm talking about the flame and the game.
And the game.
The baseball game.
Oh, those are places. Okay, so, well, first of all, the flame. When I first started learning to meditate, and anybody on here who's ADD or ADHD will know exactly what I'm talking about. I spent a good deal of time being put in my room as a youngster. And so what I would do, that's when I really started meditating, right? And I used a flame. I pictured myself in a dark cave with a candle in front of me. And I focused on that candle flame. And every time my focus would wander, I'd bring it back. Now, did I know at that time that I was developing a meditative practice? I did not. But this is what I did. And through the years, and I used that flame technique until I was in my 50s, really. That's what I used, was the technique of looking at a flame. And so to this day, if I'm in a difficult situation where there's something going on and I have to get calm like that, I will immediately see a flame in my mind's eye. And the minute I see it, my shoulders lower, my breathing slows. I am able to focus on that, and I literally am in a meditative state. It absolutely works, right? Now, the other game that you're talking about, this would be an avoidance technique, but if there's anybody on who's into psychology. Yes, when I was young growing up, nobody cried, or we didn't, right? We were in a family where that was sort of like too embarrassing or something, so we didn't, right? And as a child, you kind of learn that, okay, we don't, if we're watching something emotional on television, and nobody wants to be crying. So I kind of thought, well, what could I do for this, right? What could I do to bypass the emotion, to bypass that? Because if you're staying focused on whatever you're looking at, I would absolutely, be emotional. And so I came up with this thing of a baseball game. I would picture myself at a baseball game, sitting in the bleachers. And over the years, I would develop this whole thing. I mean, it was blue sky, sunshine. I could feel the breeze. People were eating hot dogs. I could hear the crack of the bat. I was watching the game. The minute I go there, I am there. I am absolutely, completely there. And it stops all the emotion, right? Now, is this a good thing? Well, I have gotten to the point over the years that I've decided that I'm going to stop going to games because I'm just going to stop attending, right? Because you know what? It's really okay to feel all those wonderful things, to feel those emotions, those very deep. And it wasn't until I started doing this work that I realized, look, feeling strong emotion, especially something that moves you to tears. If something and honestly, if you look at the human population and the beauty of what we are capable of, the humor we're capable of, the love we're capable of, the compassion that we are capable of, the sheer beauty of the human being, that state of being the human being, right? That brings me to tears. And so these are all really good things to feel and to experience. That feeling of overwhelming love, there, I promise you, there is not a chance in the world that you're ever going to really feel that like a samadhi experience and you're not going to be in tears. You just are. If you're going to experience it, you're going to be in that. So I've been turning in my tickets to the games. I'm just
Well, in my book, what I say is sometimes it's not the right thing to burst into tears. I say you're talking to your boss.
Yes.
And then what I do is I say, keep it for later. You've got to feel it. The body needs to feel the feelings, but keep it for in the evening.
Right. And when I lived in Colorado, I lived out there, it was east of the Colorado Springs. And my view was of just fields for as far as you can see. In fact, I said to somebody when I moved there, I said, moving here to Colorado, I thought I was going to be in the mountains and I would see mountains. I said, I look out here and I mean, honestly, this looks like Kansas out here. And the guy said, well, if you go 2 hours east, you'll be in Kansas. I said, oh, okay. So that explains it. So I'm out there one night and I try to meditate most nights. There are many nights I try to go out under the stars. Even here, I've moved to North Carolina. I love to go out at night and sit under the stars and we could call it CE5, but for me, it's meditation. It's connecting, sending out love everywhere, offering friendship. And I remember one night sitting in Colorado, it was cold, so I'm inside. I'm surrounded by my animals. I have 2 parrots, one of which just squawked, 2 dogs, 2 cats, I'm down to 1 cat at this point, but I was sitting there at night, looking out this window, looking at the stars outside, and it was completely pitch black. And I had all these animals sitting there, and I was just thinking about how much I love these animals, except for the one that's squawking at the moment. And and I was so overwhelmed with that feeling of love. And I've understood that in that state, when you get into that state, your frequency gets very close to the frequency of creation, right? That creators, you get to the very, very far, 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 far edges of that part of the universe that's out there. And because you become resonant with it. In that state of love, you've become resonant with that frequency of creation. But you're at the very, very edge. And for samadhi experiences are these overwhelming, emotional, very high frequency experiences, right? And I understood in that moment for a millisecond, and it was such a short period of time. It was like blinking and it was over. For that second, I touched the edge of that in that frequency of love. And it was as though I was allowed to see this. I was transported there. And in that millisecond, I saw all of creation. It was like I could see everything being created and the love that I thought, wow, it was so powerful that I could barely breathe. And I thought, that right there is the love that created everything. That's what that is, right? And it was so powerful. And I sat there sobbing, really. And I thought, you know what? That right there, I will spend the rest of my life trying to get back to that. to that feeling right there. It was so, it changes you, I think, on a cellular level. It does.
Yeah, definitely. I
It
think
changes
so.
your life. It does, really. You
Yeah.
know, and then you spend your rest of your time trying to get back there.
Yeah.
It's really, it's such a beautiful thing. But it's what I've been constantly. I think that message has been given to mankind on this planet by every avatar that's ever been here, by every ascended master, by every head of every religion that's ever come here, every single and all the ETs. The message has been the same: love.
And
Yeah.
and
Learn to
everybody
love.
is likely to get these messages. You do a
Yes.
meditation, you do some kind of
Right.
practice,
Right.
and you'll get that message.
You will.
You get
And
that experience.
you will. And I think people get the wrong impression. They'll think that, oh, that person's special and they're special so they can get that. I am absolutely no more special than anybody on this call or anybody in this world, right? I am not. That was very weird. Did you hear that? Holy
It
crap.
might be.
Anyway, but really, I'm not any more special than anyone, right? Because all you need to do is have the intention to do this work. It is possible for everyone. These things are open to everyone. If you're willing to meditate, you're willing to fill your heart with love, you know what? You can do, those famous words of Jesus Christ was like, all these things I can do, you can do and more. They are basically abilities, right? They are this filling of love. This is possible for everybody. These experiences of contact with ETs open to everybody.
Yeah, and you didn't start having that all your life.
No,
It started at the first CE5, right?
It's that stuff started at the first CE5. The interaction with ETs started with the first CE5. And did I find it to be unbelievable? Quite. And yet there it is. And that, one of the other reasons to raise your frequency is because it's easier for you to be in contact with them and to communicate with them. It's easier for you to receive information from them if you are doing this work. It really is. It really. And anybody can have contact with these beings. They're quite, I think, happy to have contact with human beings. That's why they're here. They're trying to help. They're here to try to, one of them came to me years ago and said, he said, in our civilization, we were just like you are now. He said, and we nearly destroyed our planet. We nearly destroyed our civilization by our own hand. And he said, we now are here trying to help you to not do that. We are doing what we can to help this civilization overcome this so that you don't destroy your planet and you do not destroy your civilization. He said, we have learned to change. And as he was saying this, I began to see this vision of what happened to his world and feel this overwhelming sadness and, horror of it. And it was really very moving. I mean, I was sitting there in tears thinking, oh my gosh. And he said, this is one of the reasons we're here, to help so that you don't go through that.
This is a message that comes to in many places because it is so important.
Exactly.
Individuals get it. Also, the school in Zimbabwe that had 2 spacecraft, or was it one land, the children got that message. Also, the Rama group, Sister Wells, he got that message. We have to be here on a mission, and this is one of the reasons why we're doing these calls, so that people, so that the message gets spread.
That's why we're mission. Yeah, that's why we're here. This is our mission, to radiate that love out, so others can feel it, to teach others to do it. And I truly believe that that's our mission, to radiate that love and light out And the more that humans actually get it and start doing it, if everybody did it,
Right.
we'd be there, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
recently, a few weeks ago, I started having these transmissions. There are some, like we would call them benedictions. There are sort of sayings that I've used in meditation. And as I was saying them and doing this radiating of love, a being came in and said, you are doing all of this, like saying, may the love of God, which passeth all understanding, keep your hearts and minds. And he said, you're thinking of humans when you do this. And I thought, oh, I kind of am. He said, why are you not including all beings everywhere?
Everybody.
He said,
Yeah.
if you want to, as humans, as a human civilization, he said, if you want to join the life and the beings and the worlds out here in the cosmos, he said, you will have to change the way you think. He said, you will have to start including all life out here in your prayers, in radiating love. He said, because what you're doing is continuing separation and division when you only think of humans. He said, you need to, if you want to join this neighborhood, you will have to begin to include other civilizations in your prayers and in your thoughts and in your messages. He said, and I will tell you that a few days later, I was doing another meditation kind of thing. And this voice comes in and says, did you include the ETs, other beings in that? And I was like, okay. He said, you must begin to think a different way. And then I said, okay, I get it. I totally get it. And then I sat there, I thought, so what is all this? What is this? I started having all kinds of things, transmissions like that, right? Do this, do that, show this, share that. And I said, this is a lot. And he said, and I got 2 words, lesson plans. I thought, okay, I got it. These are lesson plans for us. We are being kind of shown, this is how you do this. This is how you can transition into being part of the greater universe out there.
Yeah.
Part of this Milky Way galaxy, and maybe part of the universe as a whole. But we need to stop thinking, we need to stop separating ourselves from everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we might have a name for your book, Pat, with the lesson plans. I'm just looking through. Was it?
Right.
Yes, Laureen was saying you've had so many fascinating holy cow movements. How
Oh
about
man,
holy cow?
no kidding.
Holy cow.
Well,
as a
title. Years ago, when this really started happening, I thought, I should write a book, and it should be. I found myself constantly walking around in a state of amazement. Really, I mean, that's what you're like. Wait, I found myself constantly saying, "Wait, what just happened here? Wait, what just happened?" And I thought that would be the name of my book. Wait, what just happened?
That's a good one too.
Like, because you can't, in our humanness, this is not part of what we're taught that life is. People go to work, they come home, they make dinner, go to sleep. It is not like, hey, you wake up, you meditate, you have conversations with ETs, you see different dimensions and you go different places, and it's not that, right? And so we're not ready for this often. And so it takes some getting used to.
Yes.
For some people out there, for some people out there, it's literally alien.
Yeah.
It is.
Like yeah.
It is. There are, Oona, you and I have had moments, even on our road trips, we're like, wow, did you just see that? Like, in Marfa, for God's sakes, having ETs actually in the car. Like, wait, hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah, touching our
What's that?
hair and so on. Yes.
Touching your hair and looks like stars falling from the ceiling of the car. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these things are very difficult. And yet I will tell you my gratitude to these beings to come here to put themselves in jeopardy and in danger, to come here and do this work for us, to try to bring this civilization along and raise the consciousness on this planet. This is selfless work on their part, really, and I am full of gratitude for that. Really, I am to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's really crucial at this moment in time.
Crucial.
And I encourage
Yes.
everybody who's listening to this to do their part of the work in whatever way works for you and suits you. And Pat, can you share, you remember that message that you received about Pat can care?
Pat can care. Wow, that was that was in Joshua Tree. That was in Joshua Tree. We were out there, I think, for the Demi Lovato thing. And we had rented a couple houses. Dr. Greer had rented a couple of houses out there, and I was sharing a house with Dr. Greer, and I was doing a meditation one morning. He and I sat up at night talking about these most amazing high frequency conversations about love and about consciousness. And things would be whipping around the air over top of us. Some were gold. One was like a gold sphere that came right through here. And I'm like, hold on, look at that. Look at that. Oh my God. So one morning I get up, I'm trying to be very quiet. And I get up and I lay back down in bed and I think I'm going to do meditation. And I'm laying there. And all of a sudden I hear this very, very deep male voice, very deep male voice. Did not really sound human. And it said, Pat can care. And I thought, now that is a very odd message. And the next thing I see is a woman, a female ET in front of me. It's almost like she's in a framed window and she's almost floating in front of me. And she had extremely long neck, dark hair, long hair, and she's just sort of floating there. And I'm looking at this thinking, oh my gosh, I hear this voice, I see her. And they began to explain to me that they are there in Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree is very similar to their home planet, which is why they are there. And the hills that are in Joshua Tree, she shows me that they live partially underground and partially in some of these hills. And the heat, their planet is very hot, very dry, and it looks very much like Joshua Tree National Park. And I think she was showing me this because they can pick up on your frequency. They can tell if you actually care about all life, or do you just, care about, I don't know, a bigger house, more money. Those things don't matter to them, right? This is unimportant stuff. And so being able to, they shared this with me where, how they live and who they are and what they look like. It was just absolutely very touching. And I think it's the intention, right? If we care enough to offer our goodwill and friendship to them, they will reciprocate. They're happy to reciprocate, they will. It's interesting, Oona, also a recent one of the battery, right? The cell.
But let's go back to the care. Why do you think they said Pat can care? What was important there?
I think because I do care about all life. I care about their safety. I care about our safety. I care about the work that they're doing here. The fact that they would actually come here and put themselves at jeopardy to help this civilization. I think we lose that. People don't think about that.
The care, Pat can care. To me, it means more. It shows how important it is to care. Not everybody cares.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's true. It's
And
true.
everybody cares. People say, "Oh, I don't care about this," or "I don't care about that." That means
Whatever.
they don't care. Whatever, yeah, whatever
Whatever.
this, whatever that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not caring. So
That's right.
there's a beautiful energy about caring, which you do
Mm.
have.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these experiences, I mean, I know that this can be difficult for some people to, I had the conversation with Dr. Greer one time. I said, we share our experiences of what happened. And I know for a lot of people, this is really, some of this is a bridge too far. It
Mm.
really is. It's a bridge too far. I said, and so do we not share the experience? Do we share it? And he said, you have to share it anyway. You must.
I think so.
He said,
Yeah.
if you're given the experience, you must share. And that was also a message that I got early on from these beings. Look, we're happy to share and teach, but the information that you get is not for you alone. It's never for one
Yeah.
person alone. It is for everyone, and you need to share it. It
I
needs to be
totally,
shared with all.
And it's
totally agree with that.
yeah.
The saying, I feel the more that we share about these things, the more we're opening it up into other people's consciousness. It's planting a seed, and that seed will grow, and then eventually they have their own experience. And I've done that even with my husband, because when my husband used to be a real skeptic years ago when I first got into spiritual stuff. Anyway, I started sharing with him every experience I had, and then eventually started having his own experiences. So
Yeah. Well,
it works.
Yeah, it does work. And, I also say to people, listen, you need to share your experiences. Don't hide this. This is not something to be hidden. This is something to be shared. It's not a secret. This should be out for the open. I said it also allows people to see what is possible. If you see what is possible, some of these experiences, you can't go there unless someone has shown you the way. This is like, if you're going to go somewhere you never have been before, if someone says, okay, I've been there and there's the map, here's how you get here. That's kind of what some of this is, right? You are sharing how to get there. And it allows them then to have their own experiences, them to have the confidence and not to have fear. Fear is the last thing you have to overcome this, right? Have I been in situations where I could be fearful? It's interesting. I have never once in all of these experiences, and there have been too many to list, have I ever had fear of them. I never have. Humans, yes.
Yes.
No. In fact, I had a conversation with one being one time, and he said, now, if you see this particular ET, you're going to be afraid. I said, no, I won't. And he said, yes, you will. I said, no, I won't. No, I won't. And he laughed and he said, the fact that you're arguing with me that you won't, you are building the reality that you won't. This is good. So, in Joshua Tree one time, and it was the same trip where the couple was asked, if they would help. A lot happened on that trip. The very last night we were there, we were up till 4:00 in the morning, and I thought, okay, I'm going to clean up over here so that Mrs. Greer doesn't have to get up and do any of this in the morning, because we were all leaving the next day. And they were like, I think there were maybe 7 of us in that house. Justice was there and Josh, a bunch of people. And so it's 4:15 in the morning, and I finally get into my room and I think, okay, I'm going to meditate for just a few minutes here before I go to sleep. And I sat on the end of the bed and facing this sliding glass door that looks out onto the desert. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sit here and meditate, and then I'll go to sleep. And I wasn't particularly tired. And I sat down to meditate, and I looked at this glass door, and outside the glass door, there were 5 glowing, maybe 6 or 8 inch diameter glowing spheres, literally solid, like they look like silverish blue glowing spheres. And the minute I looked at them, I knew they were beings. And I said, okay, so I said, you're welcome to be in the room in any form that you're comfortable. I mean, if they wanted to be in the form in the room in their own ET form, that was fine with me. And I was just kind of letting them know that I didn't even finish that thought. And because they're telepathic, right? The minute I had the thought I was going to say it, the impulse they read. And that second, they were inside the room. No, they didn't open the door. They were just there. They were here and then they were there. And there were 5 of them hovering maybe 2 feet off the ground. And they were maybe 2 feet away. And I had no fear at all, not a bit of fear. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to actually get to ask them questions. I may actually get to communicate with them. Right. The next second, I'm so tired, I can't keep my eyes open. And the next second, I'm waking up in the morning. Now, the few nights before, when we had the whole thing in the circle, the man hurt his knee. I was sitting there next to Dr. Greer, and I was watching this, and I thought, because I've had a bad knee since I was 15. And over the years, I'd had an operation. It had gotten worse and worse and worse. And as I was sitting there watching this whole thing go on over across the circle, I just kind of had this thought, wow, wish they'd fix my knee. Now, I did not ask for them to fix my knee. It's just amusing that we would have, right? Please, I wish they'd fix my knee. Well, that's what they showed up to do.
Wow.
So that next morning, I woke up the next morning and I was so upset with myself that I fell asleep. I thought, how could I do that? I have 5 beings in my room 2 feet from me and I fall asleep? Are you kidding? What was I thinking? And then I got out of bed and I took a couple steps and I realized that my knee, which had gotten worse and worse and worse over the years, I could have walked, no pain. I'm thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then I thought, oh my God, my knee was it 100% fixed? No, was it 90% fixed? You bet. And I thought, wow, they must not have had much time to work on this. And I found Dr. Greer. He had just woken up, and I said, you're not going to believe this, what happened? And I said, but I fell asleep. I mean, why did I not just take some time to talk? He said, Pat, do you not understand? They put you to sleep. They anesthetized you. That's it. They fixed the knee. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm telling you, you have no idea how many meditations I sit and I say to them, those 5, I am in your debt for forever. All you need to do is let me know what I can do for you, and I will do it. I am at your service. Really. I mean, this, I think, I've thought about that. Why did that happen? I actually think they're as grateful to us for doing the work that we're all doing on these calls, that we're on this call, everybody on this call right now, all the work that we're doing, we're learning, we're sharing, we're teaching others. They are as grateful to us as I am to them for that, believe me.
Yeah.
That gratitude goes both ways. And I think when they can help, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
I've
jump
had a
in
similar experience.
on speaking about our experiences, and we are often afraid of other people's opinions. And
Right.
just today, I heard a friend. He said that his download was, when we form opinions, we become attached to this life. When we form
Very true.
opinions, we become attached to this life. And this is the beauty of CE5 that I experienced, was that, yes, we're all asked to share, but none of us need to judge. We just accept that this is the person's experience. There's no need to judge. We can discern, but no judgment. And that's you don't find that very often in groups.
No, but
that's-
in these groups you do find it. I think that's
Because
the
it's
Yeah.
so important.
people
Yeah.
just don't have, they can't share things like this in with their families often. Do you know how many CE5s I've been on 6-night events where people will be on those events and their families have no idea where they are for that week? They won't share it.
Wow.
They don't share
Wow.
it. I said to the one guy, I said, wait, your wife doesn't know you're here? He said, no. I said, you're kidding. You've had all these experiences. Why would you not tell her? He said, oh, she could never understand this. She would absolutely freak out and be horrible. I said, so
Oh, dear.
yeah. I mean, so this is another important part of these of people getting together like this. This is a safe place for people to share what they've experienced. It's also a safe place to ask questions. It's also a safe place to learn about these subjects, because you're not going to go out there and just find books on the stuff we talk about
No.
on these calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know, it's not that it's secret. It's just that there's always been a stigma attached to it, a judgment
Yeah.
attached. Yeah.
We have a question here from Rob. Has Pat
Okay.
ever had contact with any Rama guides like Antarel?
No. You know, that's an interesting thing. Somebody said, well, did you ask them what their name was? I don't ask their names. I don't ask them where they're from. It has never been important. I know I've spoken with Paula Harris. She's a good friend, and she had contact with Antarel out in Mount Shasta. I'm interested in the Brahma group. I've never attended one of their things. Oona, you know, we've got plenty of friends who have. Paula's done it. Marcel and Lyra have gone to these. And so, you know, a lot of people we know have been with the Brahma groups, and I've been interested in it, but have never gone.
Yeah.
I have usually been, you know, doing something else during those times, but
And I
yeah.
have joined an internet group, Rama group, and I'm looking forward to the first live in person gather. Yeah. I think, you know, maybe we can finish up with what to me is the most important message you received about the mechanics of love.
You mean the one recently, the one that you had,
Yes.
I sent to you and you sent
Yes.
back?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right. So in that, I remember I was sitting here because we have there's a lot of times where I'm getting a transmission or I'm getting information. You know how this goes, and Ginny, you'll get this but there's not a back and forth. You know, as rarely is there, you're getting this, right? It's not like then, okay, now there's a Q&A and I can ask questions. It doesn't work like that, right? And I was sitting here one day saying, you know, I think really that's kind of the next step that we need to think about with the work that everybody's doing, right? There has to be a point at which we can start having those kinds of conversations, that kind of input, right? And I thought, you know,
I've been asking for that.
Yeah, how do we do that, right? How do we have this back and forth? And I thought maybe I need to reconnect somehow into something. And I'm thinking, I wonder how you do this. And this immediately I got the answer. It said, love is that answer. I'm thinking, okay, yet again, love is that answer. It says, you do need to fill your heart with love. It said, love is an energy. If you want to connect to source, you need to connect with energy. And the source is energy, and love is energy. And so connect through that. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, so this is an energy source, actually, right? And then it became clear to me, like, oh, wait a minute, it's an energy source. In order to be a part of this, you basically have to almost plug into that, right? And to refill your battery. And then I'm given this whole thing, look, you wouldn't, if you were going to use something that had batteries and it was critical, you would never go into this without a full set of batteries, fully charged batteries. I said, so the work that we're doing right now, don't go into this without a fully charged battery. And that is fully filled, your heart completely full of love. This is how you recharge yourself. This is how you fill the battery. This is what makes you ready to do whatever is happening on this earth at this point, or whatever is to come, right? You will need to have a full battery. You need to fill your heart with love. And so it's just really simple. It's very simple. Anyone can do it. And that was the moment also that I began to understand that this energy is available to everybody. It's sort of like 0 point energy, right? It is. That's what it is. It's that 0 point energy field that is out there, and anybody can plug into that. Anybody, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just an absolutely beautiful message.
And it's so clear that it's the same as,
Yeah.
it's exactly the same as electronics.
And you can learn to do this with your heart. This is how you do it, with your consciousness, with your heart. Now, does that take some work on our part? It does. It takes some work on our part. And I thought, okay, now wait, do I need a device for this? And they said, the heart is the device. Oh, okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing that they are patient.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Well, Pat, this has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. And although I can't see everybody on the call, and I haven't been able to see all the messages and everything, thank you to everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Oona. Thank you, Ginny. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And
these friendships are important.
Friendships are important, and
Very important.
yes, the people listening to this, your friends also.
Yep.
Pat, we've got so much more to talk about. We know that.
Okay. The next time I come on, we need to talk about the energy downloads, because those are phenomenal. Yeah. Important.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
thank you
so much, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speak to you
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful. Yes. Yeah. She's such a wonderful person.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely.
Ginny, do you?
I have pulled a card for everybody who's on the call. Yeah. And literally I've got let go. So interesting what we were talking about, let go of all of that stuff and come back home to who you truly are. And on the card, it actually says, sometimes we cling to things even though it is obvious they no longer serve us. So again, the message is go with the flow. Don't hold on to things. And I think this is for us all, certainly for me as well. We don't need to hold on to things, and literally go with the flow of life, go with the flow of information, have your discernment, but again, come back into the heart. Your heart will show you the way. Yeah. And so, let go of things. We're rapidly moving at the moment. Time is speeding up. Things are happening very, very quickly all around the world, including in our own worlds. And so it's allow that to go, and whatever unfolds as we go forward with an open heart.
Because of course, I was talking to Pat before we got on, and we both said there's no way either of us could have planned the kind of life we had. And it's probably true for you too. There's no way to have planned it. So why not go with whatever the plan is that we don't know about?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the way forward. We don't need to know. Just go with the flow.
Yes. Yes. And watch what happens.
Yes.
Ginny, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I,
God bless you, Oona, for all the work you're doing.
oh, and you too. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
The